Thank you very much for coming, everybody. My name is Todd Feinman. I'm also here with Gabe Gumbs. Give you a quick background to make sure you're all in the right spot. This talk is on the sensitive data maturity model. We're going to be walking through what our architect here has built as a very robust system to helping companies really get a feel for sensitive data, where it is, who owns it, what should I be doing with it, do I have too much of it? My name is Todd Feinman. I'm the CEO and founder of Identity Finder, and I've been doing this for 30 years. I used to work at PricewaterhouseCoopers where we were implementing products that did data loss prevention. Since then, I started Identity Finder about 10 years ago. I've been the CEO of the company since. I'm here with Gabe Gumbs. Gabe has about a decade of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. He worked for Pfizer developing their security program. Then he went on to White Hat, where he was the thought leader and architect for many of their security programs. Now he's with us, and he's going to be walking you through the sensitive data maturity model today. Quick background on who we are as a company. Identity Finder was founded in 2006. We essentially help companies manage sensitive data. Our product, Sensitive Data Manager, does data discovery. It focuses on the data at rest to achieve an extremely high degree of accuracy. It's one of our biggest differentiators, but we don't end there. A lot of companies are saying, great, I've classified my data, now what? What do I do with it? We now also automatically classify documents using our same technology based on the results from discovery. So the idea is, if you've detected something has intellectual property in it, you know it should be classified as confidential. We'll walk through a little bit more of this today, but we really want to talk to you about the model itself. Just a quick background on the company. We have about 750 customers to date. We're partners with some of the largest security companies out there, like Intel Security. We have about 49 employees, and we just announced the release of Sensitive Data Manager 9.0. Okay, so let's get started with the model itself. The CISO, one of the most critical roles for an organization managing security today, has to deal with a ton of data. Who should have access to it? How do you hold those people accountable for access to it? What happens when it gets modified? All of these things go into the daily operations of a CISO. Legal ramifications, compliance. Usually it's the CISO who's going to lose their job if something is supposed to be in compliance and it's not. So the data is going to bridge the gap amongst all the different responsibilities that the CISO has. Sometimes there's a chief data officer, sometimes there isn't a CISO and it's the CIO. The point is there's typically one person who has this role within an organization, and data is absolutely critical to that role. Now, not all data is equal. Sensitive data is the most important stuff, but that's going to be different for me versus you versus the next guy. Sensitive data could be social security numbers, it could be credit card data, it could be intellectual property, could be trade secrets, could be any of that information. And the idea is we're trying to start out with who's going to be ultimately accountable for this. What is that role that's going to help define for the organization what that model should look like on how to handle that data? Along with that, what are the other roles that have some sort of aspect as it relates to that data? There are people who use it, there are people who are accountable for it, there are the consumers of it. So we've started to lay out for you what some of the roles you need to consider in your organization as it relates to the data itself. Stakeholders, owners, stewards, producers, consumers. There could be more roles in your organization. But as we talk through the model later today and Gabe starts to walk you through it, I want you to remember these roles, because it's not just about technology, it's always about people, process, and technology. And the people aspect of this is going to be absolutely critical. So a lot of the questions we get asked is, great, we've gone through this process, we know who's supposed to own the data, but now technology changes so quickly, data's going up to the cloud, people are sharing it with other vendors, it's all over the place. Having a report that tells me where sensitive data is or how to look at my maturity model of sensitive data doesn't quite help. That's where I mentioned a little bit earlier on about classification. Regardless of how you're doing it, even if you're doing it manually, it's important that data be classified. The idea here is you've had a lot of data that's been sitting on-prem. If anyone in your organization has had the ability to upload this to the cloud, right there by definition, you have some form of a hybrid cloud strategy. As it moves up to the cloud, you're going to lose it or lose control of it because now people can share it with other people much more easily than before. You also don't have a firewall on whatever goes into Dropbox or Box or any of the other major cloud vendors. So the idea here is with classification, if your data is being classified and inside the metadata it identifies what is confidential or sensitive or completely public about this information, as it gets transmitted into the cloud or leaves your organization, that metadata stays with the file and it allows you to manage it better. It allows you to build technologies, or I should say implement technologies that would potentially allow you to block it from being copied to USB drives or uploaded to the cloud or what have you. But the idea here is that there's so much data, it's all over the place. Being able to get a controlled handle of where it is at that point in time and then having it stick with it persistently ultimately is very helpful. This is what's going to help you move forward in this maturity model as data is copied and replicated and shared. So you don't have to use our technology. You don't have to use any technology. As I said, you could do this manually. I did want to discuss for 1 minute only how this is very important, because automating the process and using accurate results that you can rely on to make sure that you have the right metadata on a file is absolutely critical. A lot of organizations will say, just do data classification. People have been saying that for 10 years. It's not a checkbox. This is by far one of those technologies you don't want to just check a box and say you're doing. You want to be able to rely on whatever that classification is. And you're going to have your own ways of doing that, your own schema. You could do it based on what's in the data, who owns the data, who touches the data on a regular basis. Could be even what folder it's in. The most important thing is to really make sure that it's representative of how critical that data is to you. If that data was stolen, how much damage would it cause your company? Because ultimately you want to classify that data to minimize the damage that would come from a data breach or whatever, an employee being malicious. Turn things over to Gabe to actually walk you through some of the details of this program.
Thank you, Todd. So, good in the back still? All right. So there are a number of existing security maturity models, and they cover a wide range of security practices and domains. Each of them come complete with a set of their own activities, and many of them you can map to each other. The idea behind creating yet another model wasn't to give you wasn't to create kind of our own way of doing this, but it was so that we could provide a mechanism for organizations to be able to achieve some of the same things, but in a very data security specific mechanism, very data specific way. So, as a provider of a data security solution, one of the things that we get tasked with is not just, as Todd mentioned, the classification and so on that we perform with our native solution, but also helping our customers be successful in their overall data security programs. We have a number of ways that we currently offer that, from one-on-one services, training, things of that nature. And all security is an exercise in protecting data, especially sensitive data. However, much like there are models to address specific things like software development and the COVID models that speak specifically to governance and IT alignment models, we looked around and we just didn't find one that spoke specifically to data security. So we decided to create one. One of our primary initiatives as an organization has always been to share the collective information that our data security experts has. Todd, as you mentioned, has been doing this for 30 years as an organization. We've been doing this for 10. Myself and some of the others, we've been doing this for several decades. And so we started putting together the framework for the model, and then we consulted with a number of outside practitioners as well. A couple of sitting CISOs, some directors of risk, as well as some security architects and so on. And we wanted to create an effective and measurable data security control that was able to allow an organization to benchmark their maturity both internally across business units as well as against other organizations as well. So the full talk on this is actually, it runs a little over 90 minutes. What I want to do is I want to give everyone kind of a high-level overview of it, and then I'll point you to some resources to learn more or to participate in the full conversation itself. The model is broken down across 4 business functions, and each business function then has 3 security practices associated with it, and 4 levels of maturity ranging from activities not being performed all the way to a measured and control state, and in between that a reactive and proactive state where there are certain activities that are being performed as when you see the actual, when you see the full model, we have them all defined, as well as some accompanying documentation on how to use it as a mechanism for performing data security gap analyses and things of that nature within your organization. So governance, vision, validation, implementation. So governance, so these are the practices that help you organize, manage, and measure the data security program at a high level. They define the goals, the responsibilities, and all the activities that are going to go into your data security programs. You see some of the security practices that are listed out there, and we have the example activities for each of those. Vision, so those are the business practices that collect information that's used in the execution of the actual data security strategies. Whether that's across the entire company or functional areas, they all need to have data security vision that's aligned with the business and that's going to meet those security objectives. So validation, we have to do what we say we're going to do. You talked about that a minute ago, Todd, where it's not enough to simply perform the classification, things of that nature, but we have to be able to actually say that we're going to execute on the things and policies that we've prescribed. Not to be confused with our governance functions, validations are practices that are concerned with the assurance of your data security controls, including the monitoring of file content and things of that nature. And then lastly, implementation. So those are the practices that form the data security gates and the touch points, some of which we saw in the earlier slide as well, that will interact with our traditional security controls, whether that's network security, access controls, encryption, things of that nature. So how is this actually achieved? So the assessment, so the model itself comes accompanied with a couple of assessment worksheets that allow you to place the inputs in with regards to the activities that the organization's actually performing, and they cover some of the most common activities carried out at varying maturity levels. There's certain activities that may be that you may consider important, while others, depending on both their business needs as well as their regulatory needs, may not necessarily have to place within those same levels of maturity. The model is not intended to be one where everyone is expected to go from not performing an activity all the way to a measured and control state throughout all of the activities or all of the business functions for that matter. Like most models, we expect that it's going to be used and tailored to your individual needs. Say again? Is it based off of something? It's based roughly off of a capability model. I mean, we didn't model it directly off of another one. I mentioned before that with most of the models out there, you could map them against each other. As part of a follow-up exercise, as we continue to mature the model, we will go backwards and perform a matching against some of the existing frameworks. There certainly are some overlaps. That is intentional. Security as it is, obviously, we're not reinventing the wheel here. What we wanted to do was create one location where our customers and everyone else in the community, for that matter, could access a resource that helped them plan a path to data security. If there was something that I could say it most closely resembled, it has some similarities to the COBIT model, it has some similarities to the C2M2 model, but ultimately what we did was we looked at all the activities that a number of our customers were performing, some of the folks that we brought in to help consult on the actual model, things that we've been doing, Todd's been doing over the years, and put it together based on that. So once the assessments are performed, we expect that you'll have high and low watermarks created post-assessment that you can use to map that improvement, and again, serving kind of as a gap analysis tool. And with that understanding of where your data security program stands, you can create a plan to improve based on some of the other activities that are defined in the model. I think we're... So I'll open it up for a couple of questions, but I wanted to just throw up a slide with some resources where you can learn more. Again, the entire model defined in its entirety. We're going to be presenting that on March 16th live at 1 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be roughly about 90 minutes. I didn't want to try and cram too much in here because it likely could confuse more than it could help. But hopefully that gives everyone a good idea of what it is that we've laid out. And we'd love to have you come by and learn a bit more about it, give us some feedback, take it home, introduce it into your environment, things of that nature. Questions? Say again, sir? The question was, is this based on DMMI? It's not taken directly from it. We did borrow a few things from it, as it, again, specifically relates to data security. So we extracted some of the components, some of the activities that were relevant to some of the business functions that are laid out in the model. Yes, it will. Yes, most certainly. And again, that's one of those things where as we get a bit more feedback and we understand what folks are largely relying on today for some of their data security maturity needs, we'll map those directly back and forth and then post those as part of the project as well. Any other questions? All right.